Having dismissed the doctors, he kept Bertrand with him. That same evening, we learned the governor had prevented the volumes from leaving Longwood. But the officers, informed of the emperor's courtesy, sent their thanks, and after his death, they demanded that the governor give them the books. When I returned to Europe, I was amazed to read Dr. Entomarshy's book, page 94 of the second volume on St. Helena, that the emperor, after praising Marlborough and giving the general's campaigns as a present to Dr. Arnott for his regiment, joked about Marlborough and sang the first verse of the song written about him. That the author, who was present when the gift was made, was unable to repress a moment of mirth caused by a song with which he was rocked to sleep as a child, so he said, I do not contest. But he was wrong in reporting a false anecdote that cast ridicule on the honorable reasons for the 20th Regiment's receiving the Emperor's gracious gift. He would have done better to keep it quiet, for I certainly would not have revealed the severe and disapproving look his laughter earned him. Dr. Entomarshy had a frivolous character, but was not a bad man. His humor, inclined toward mockery, led to a few admonitions from the Emperor. The latter questioned the doctor's ability, and if he appeared satisfied after chatting with him on his arrival in St. Helena. It was more in order to inspire trust among those who surrounded him than through any personal conviction. It only took me a few days after Dr. Entomarshy arrived to judge, if not his knowledge, at least his character. Having never in his life approached an eminent and powerful personage like the Emperor, he was ignorant of the ground on which he trod. When he arrived, he had discussed the Emperor's health with me frequently, and every morning he talked to me to learn of the night's events. I thus attempted to warn him about what might give the Emperor a bad opinion of him. Be more serious when with the Emperor, I told him, when you answer the questions asked of you, and when speaking of Count de Montsalon and the Grand Marshal, refrain from saying Bertrand and Montsalon. The Emperor speaks to them that way, but you must not allow yourself to do so. He thanked me and took my advice. Perhaps he even believed I had been asked by the Emperor to say this to him, which was not the case. The priests, for their part, were very respectful and never failed to use the title of Count or Excellency when speaking to either one. On April 16th, the Emperor's feet could be kept warm at night only with hot towels. When Dr. Entomarshy was announced, he strongly reprimanded him for his flippancy and the impropriety of his behavior the previous day. The doctor tried to excuse himself through the memory prompted by a song with which he had been rocked to sleep as a child. When he dismissed him, he asked him to summon Count de Montsalon. He remained with him until 3 o'clock. I only entered the room during that time to hold his head when he vomited twice in succession and to wrap his feet in hot towels. The Emperor told me to give him some of the Las Casas wine. I took the liberty of expressing my fears about the reaction this might cause. Count de Montsalon urged him not to continue dictating his last wishes, assuring the Emperor that he had all the time he needed to worry about bequests, also adding that he thought the wine might do him harm. The Emperor insisted on having some, dipped a biscuit in it, resumed writing, and said to Count de Montsalon, My son, it is time that I finish this. I feel it. Sitting up in bed, the Emperor held a board with one hand and wrote with the other without support. Standing next to the bed, Count de Montsalon held an inkwell. When the Grand Marshal arrived with the doctors, the Emperor revealed nothing of what he had been doing, but nausea seized him, and he told Dr. Entomarshy that to give him strength, he had taken some Constance wine with a biscuit. The doctor replied that was like throwing oil on a fire. He then asked Dr. Entomarshy what his chances were. He replied that they were good, and that his condition was not desperate. Doctor, you are not telling the truth, replied the Emperor. You are wrong in trying to hide my condition from me. I know what it is. Have you heard of Corvisart, of Larry? More of the latter than the former? What consideration Larry had for his patients, both in Egypt or during our desert crossing, and in Europe. He was always seen going from one end of the column to the other to tender his care. What a man! What a brave and noble man was Larry. I developed an esteem for him that was never disappointed. If the army should erect a column to gratitude, it owes the original to Larry. If we were fortunate enough to hear the emperor's last words, let us not forget, when faithfully reporting them, to make known those in honor of the virtuous man who deserved them so well. In another instance, when expressing his dissatisfaction to Dr. Entomarchi because he was never at home when he went to find him, he said, "If Larry were here, he would not leave my room, and he would sleep at the foot of my bed as Montalon and Marchand do." The emperor continued to query the doctor, asking about British army dress, how the sick were tended to in camp, if after a battle the British experienced more casualties than the French. Dr. Arnott replied that French doctors were very knowledgeable, but he believed the losses were greater on our side. The emperor seemed to believe the opposite and thought that a properly executed amputation saved men who otherwise would have been lost to the country. That, he said, was Larry's opinion. Your infantry acquitted themselves well at Waterloo and did better than your cavalry. You would have good soldiers if you knew how to inspire a love of glory in them. But your punishments of rope lashes only turns them into brutes. The French soldier, who is capable of great understanding and judgment, wants someone to speak to his soul. It is impossible for a soldier who has just received several dozen lashes to then want to distinguish himself in front of his comrades. I have been told, said the emperor, that the British soldier is so little interested in reaching officers' ranks that during the Spanish War, where losses were high, they disliked seeing the non-commissioned officers become officers because they were not gentlemen. Countess Bertrand, who had not come for several days, appeared after the doctors had left to inquire after the emperor's health. I informed His Majesty, who had remained alone with the Grand Marshal. The emperor told me to thank her. When Dr. Entomarchi left, he expressed a hope not shared by Dr. Arnott, and Doctors Short and Mitchell were called in consultation during the day at Count de Montagn's house. On the 17th and 18th, the emperor spent several hours alone with Count de Montagn. Tired of his licorice water, he tried a little of the refreshments placed on his side table, such as lemonade, raspberry water, and barley water. Count Bertrand arrived after a few minutes before the doctors. When they came in, the emperor, sitting in his armchair, said to me in a tone indicating great weakness, "Open that door to the garden, my son, that I may breathe God's air." "Bertrand," he said to the Grand Marshal, "go get me a rose. Air is such a sweet thing," he said, looking up. Then, taking the rose offered him, he said, looking at Dr. Arnott, "It is not enough to be surrounded by them. We want to enjoy them even more by bringing them near. Just as the lungs never dilate enough to breathe in air that is pure and scented, we like to bring a rose close to better enjoy its fragrance. What do you think, Doctor? We aren't spoiled much here." The Grand Marshal immediately translated the Emperor's words, to which the doctor replied, "The air in St. Helena is not bad. It is entertainment and exercise that you are lacking." "You mean a grave, Doctor, and that won't take long. Your government shall be satisfied." The Emperor was already so weakened, his physical strength so diminished, that it was impossible to doubt he was telling the truth. He ate a light soup for dinner with a little jelly and had great difficulty shaving the next morning. During the day, I gave Count de Montauban the inventories he had asked me for. The night was as restless as all the previous ones, Count de Montauban said as he left the Emperor. On April 17th, as Count de Montauban had arrived much earlier than usual, he told him to continue reading about Hannibal's campaigns. Doctors Arnott and Entomarchi arrived at 4 p.m. The Emperor got out of bed to sit in his armchair, leaning on Count Bertrand to reach it. He ate very little of what was offered him for dinner, and Dr. Arnott urged him to eat some more. "What's the use," the Emperor replied, "since my stomach will not keep it down? You will only know exactly what my illness is when you open me up." That morning, the Emperor had talked to Count de Montauban about our return to Europe. He reviewed the provisions on hand and those likely to be put on board to serve during our crossing. Even the sheep kept in the stables were not overlooked. The Emperor spoke of all those details with a calm that belongs only to a spirit as strong as his. That evening, after the Grand Marshal left, the Emperor told me to place the covered lamp at the head of his bed so that he would not be bothered, and to continue reading to him about Hannibal's campaigns. At 9 o'clock, Count de Montauban arrived. I left him alone with the Emperor and left Saint-Denis asleep in the adjoining room. Since he had been bedridden, the Emperor listened to Mass from his bed. The night of the 19th was difficult. He was unable to rest. The following day showed the effects of his agitation that finally subsided in the afternoon. Having dismissed Count de Montauban, the emperor sent me to look for Homer and told Count Bertrand to read him a song from it. He depicts so well the image of the watches and councils I often held on the eve of battles that I always enjoy hearing it. At 4 o'clock, he took some meat jelly and had it tasted by Dr. Arnott, who found it to be good. He did not feel any nausea during the day because he reasoned he had not moved around. This improvement lasted part of the night and into the morning. The weather was fine, and the emperor urged Count de Montauban to get some fresh air and to find out news. As I remained alone with him, standing at the foot of his bed, he told me that he was naming me jointly with Count de Montauban and Emperor Bertrand as the executors of his will. My surprise was as great as the honor bestowed on me. I stammered that I would remain worthy of the trust and the position to which he promised me, and my emotion was very deep. I have left with the Grand Marshal, he said, a will to be opened by him after my death. Tell him to give it to you and bring it to me. I left the emperor. When I made this request of the Grand Marshal on His Majesty's behalf, he appeared surprised, but he went to get it on his desk and handed it to me without anything betraying the thought that the emperor might be making new arrangements. The emperor took the envelope, unsealed it, read through the pages of the document, and tore it in two, telling me to put it in the fire. These were beautiful pages to keep, written in the emperor's own hands. I held them in my hand, but the emperor wanted them destroyed. Such as they were handed to me, they were thrown into the fire, where they were soon consumed by the flames, without my knowing anything of what they had said. General de Montauban told me he had found them in the emperor's papers written in pencil, and I remembered these provisions very well when he mentioned them to me. The diamond necklace the emperor gave me in one of his codicils was at that point divided between Countess Bertrand and her daughter, and Countess de Montauban and her daughters. During the afternoon, Count Bertrand came as usual. The doctors arrived after him. The emperor got out of bed and, supported by the Grand Marshal's arm, went to sit in his armchair to have dinner, but he took very little of what he was served. He talked to Dr. Arnott about the shameful treatment he received from the British government, and he told the Grand Marshal to translate his words. I came to sit at the hearth of the British people, requesting honest hospitality, and against all rights on earth, I was answered with irons. I certainly would have been received better by Alexander, the Emperor of France, even by the King of Prussia. Those princes would have been more generous, but it was England's part to lead the kings and to give the world the unheard of spectacle of four great powers, all intent on harming one single man. It is your ministry that has chosen this awful rock where the life of a European is consumed in a few years in order to finish mine through assassination. How have I been treated in this time that I've been here? There are no indignities. They did not take pleasure in heaping on me. The simplest communications with my family have been denied me. They have allowed no news of my wife nor my son to reach me. As a residence, I have been given the least habitable place where the murderous climate of the tropics is felt the most. I have had to lock myself inside for 4 walls in an unhealthy atmosphere. I, who used to travel on horseback throughout all of Europe. That, doctor, is the hospitality I've received from your government. I am being slowly assassinated with great precision, with premeditation, and the infamous Hudson Lowe is the executioner of your minister's high works. You shall end up like the proud Republic of Venice, and I, dying on this awful rock, I bequeath the shame of my death to the ruling house of England. The emperor was admirable in his short but spirited speech, which, accurately reproduced, sentence by Count Bertrand, deeply moved the doctor. He answered nothing to the accusations he recognized to be true, but to his face showed his disapproval of his governor's conduct. After some conversation, the emperor dismissed the 2 doctors and kept Count Bertrand with him until 7 p.m. Night had fallen an hour before the Grand Marshal left. I went into the emperor's room. The covered lamp was in the room adjoining the one he occupied. I was quietly approaching the bed when he told me to bring him the diamond necklace that Queen Hortense had given him when he left Malmaison. I went to get it in the travel kit, where it was carefully locked up, along with the receipts for the amounts deposited with Monsieur Lafitte. I brought it to the emperor, who told me as he handed it to me. Kind Hortense gave it to me, believing I might need it. I estimate its value at 200,000 francs. Hide it around your body. I give it to you. I do not know what condition my affairs in Europe are in. It is the only object of value of which I can dispose. It shall allow you to await the fate that I am planning for you. In my will and my codicil, you shall have a title. I shall write to the Empress for her to give you a decoration from her states. Marry honorably. Make your choice among the families of the officers or soldiers of my old guard. There are many of these brave soldiers who are not happy. A better fate would have been theirs if not for France's reversals of fortune. Posterity shall recognize what I would have done for them had circumstances been otherwise. He was tired and kept quiet a short while, then resumed. Once you have returned to France, you shall arrange to go and see the Empress and my son. When he has reached his 15th year, you shall give him the objects of which I make you depository, and you shall encourage him to take back his name of Napoleon. I assure the Emperor I would not fail to follow any of his instructions, and that his wishes were sacred to me. I promised him, as much as my emotion allowed me to, as I was choking, that the fortune and honors he was bestowing on me would be shared with a girl whose father had spilled his blood for the motherland and the Emperor's glory. I could not bring myself to wear the necklace on my body, as the Emperor had told me to do. I put it back in the travel kit where it was. I can even say that such a valuable gift bothered me for a time. In caring for the Emperor, my readiness and eagerness until then could not have been brought under suspicion, and I feared for a moment that I would show too much eagerness, and that this would be attributed to the great destiny the Emperor intended for me. It was certainly very stupid, but it was a fear I felt, and that I only overcame through being aware of it. As I had been told, the Emperor, that his improvement seemed to have lasted the whole day, he replied, I am a little quieter, but not better. It is a moment of respite. Had my illness been taken care of in time, they might perhaps have been able to cure me. My end is near. Nature wanted to give me a good day in order to settle my affairs. I told Montholon to have you purchase a property close to his in Burgundy. You shall be happy there. The inhabitants are good people whom I have always found to be patriots. Count de Montholon, who is coming to take up his watch over the Emperor, was announced.